Good evening and welcome to our Thursday night show tonight. Tonight, I'm kind of excited about this show. This is one that I've been looking forward to for quite a while. Robert Lindquist, who is one of the founders of Mobile Beat magazine, is going to be on with me tonight, and we're going to be talking about where we came from as an industry, the early days, even before my time. Oh, Robert, you're going to probably hate me for saying this, but it's going to be a fun night to kind of look back at where we've come from as DJs. We'll be right back.
DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
All right, we are back. Tonight, we're going to be looking back at history. This isn't going to be one that's going to probably teach you much, except maybe the history of where we've been a little bit, but we're going to have a lot of fun reminiscing tonight. My guest tonight is Robert Lindquist. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, John. This is a real pleasure to be on with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for making time tonight to join me. This is going to be kind of fun. For a lot of people, Robert was a face in the DJ industry for a long time, but he's been working on other projects for the last few years. So some of you may not be familiar with him, but Robert, you were one of the original founders of Mobile Beat magazine.
Yeah, that's correct. We started that in 1990, I guess it was. And originally, Mike Bonacorso was working with me on it. And then later on, he bought in, became one of the partners, and the two of us were partners in that for just under 15 years.
Wow, 1990. It seems like it's been forever, but really when you start looking back, it's like it really wasn't that long ago. I remember 1990 really well. So let's kind of even go back farther than that, because you were a mobile DJ who got into the publishing in 1990. When did you start that mobile DJ side of it?
Actually, I did my first DJ job in 1967. We started off, first of all, doing high school dances. You know, after football games, they'd want to have some music, have something in the cafeteria. So myself and a couple of other friends that were audio nuts started figuring out how to put things together that would make the music louder, basically. And it sounded like crap in most cases. And we would do whatever we had to do to make it work. I mean, I can remember trying to hook things into the cafeteria system, which was like, one of those industrial pizza radio type systems, and you're not supposed to plug things into that if you don't know what you're doing. But we'd get some sound out of it, and we learned how to string a few resistors together and some capacitors, and how to solder. And little by little, we started building some of our own gear.
So in the early days, then you're building gear. There wasn't really much out there. When did you really start to see companies start to create things for the DJ industry or for your applications?
I think because all we had to work with really, aside from being able to buy some, and keep in mind now, this is around not too long after Woodstock. And when Woodstock was done, a lot of people don't realize that was actually mixed with 4 or 5 Shure mixers, which at the time were just, like they had them in band class at school and things like that. And they had, I think he had 20 Macintosh, basically audiophile amps that were running to a bunch of EV speakers and JBL boxes that they had constructed. So, that was 1969. There wasn't much out there for PA. So what we had to work with is we had Allied Night Kit and Heathkit and some of these other companies where you could at least build a reasonable tube amplifier. Might sound okay, wouldn't be real loud. For speakers, a lot of times we had a friend that ran a TV repair shop, and I doubt anybody on here even remembers the concept of actually fixing a television. But we would go down there and we'd say, what parts have you got? We'd grab old chassis and we'd build speakers out of the old TV consoles. And none of this stuff sounded anywhere near what it would sound like today, but it got us by, and it worked. So we got by with that up until I think, some of the audiophile stuff that started coming into the country after the Vietnam War. A lot of guys brought stuff back, Sansui, Kenwood, a lot of those things were basically designed for home use, but they were good enough to be used on the road as well. So I think when I first started actually doing paid gigs, I had a Kenwood 7400 amp and a couple of BIC speakers, and it worked. It would work. And then little by little, we started to find things by Crown and Crest. Being here in Rochester, in the Rochester area, Ashley Audio was very big, and they were extremely supportive of a lot of things that we were doing. So, if we got our first Ashley, that was great, because those things were boat anchors, but they were bulletproof. And I know we used those a lot, and little by little, we just started finding more and more things that were available. As far as mixers go, it was really hard at first. There wasn't much of anything out there. Then I think Newmark started coming out with a few things. Radio Shack had some things. Gemini came along after that. Gem Sound, those were some of the earlier names in putting out actual DJ mixers that were designed for DJs. And a lot of that technology came up from New York, New Jersey, and most of the stuff was either made offshore somewhere in Japan. But little by little, we were able to get actual mixers and didn't have to try to do it with just using a left and right knob on an amplifier.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I remember doing it with that idea myself many years later. But take us back to when you were getting into your first wedding. I mean, you obviously have, over the years, you've done many types of events, but let's go back to that early wedding. What kind of expectations were the couples having back then, and for comparing and contrasting to more of what we see today?
They had no expectations, and we didn't know what we were doing. So it worked out fine.
That's what I was after.
Yeah, because I can remember doing my first wedding and having them come over and asking about some of these traditional things. And literally, we didn't even think at the time, and this would have been probably sometime in the 70s or late 70s, never even occurred to us to say, what are your expectations? What do you want from a DJ? What music do you want us to play? We just figured they want us to come play music. So I can remember going over to the photographer, and that was the smartest thing I could have ever done, and said, they're asking me to do this and this and this. What do I do? And we just kind of picked it up from there.
Oh, fun. Yeah, that was that very first experience with ours early on. There was just no one had an idea of what to do. It's just beyond. We're gonna play music and hopefully people will dance.
I can remember them saying, play something we can chicken dance to.
Okay.
Because we didn't have the chicken dance. I'm sure it was out, but we didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. We didn't have it and weren't expecting it. So we just put on like a Beach Boys song, and they all chicken danced to it, and it was fine. So.
That's funny.
I just kind of told them, you can chicken dance to this. So.
Yeah, there's a beat to it. You just kind of do the, Oh, goodness.
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of kind of feeling our way through it and trying to figure it out. And fortunately, the gear, even a lot of it was pretty makeshift. We very seldom had many problems with that. So it was just a matter of just trying to listen. And I think that's really how we learned. We just started listening. What are they asking for? And now let's work from that. So once we figured out what people started asking for on a regular basis, kind of built a playlist from there, and kind of grew with that. But the thing was, there was no iTunes or anything back then, so the music selection was much more focused and much more limited. So you didn't have people coming in and requesting something that they had heard that nobody else has ever heard, which happens a lot now.
Yeah,
but then it was pretty much, the Mobile Beat Top 200. That's where that grew out of, was the fact that there were basically 200 songs that every DJ was playing, and then a few others.
Yeah, very much so. Depending a couple of regional variations, but not much in the early days. Yeah. So let's kind of take us from the DJ part of your career now, and then you moved into the starting Mobile Beat in the 90s. What kind of was the took you from point A to point B?
Well, I was in radio for a good deal of the time. So while I was doing mobile jobs, I was also in radio, and when I decided to kind of go semi full-time doing the DJ thing, as I seen that start to grow, I had left radio and I was working as a partner in an advertising agency. So that gave me, between the radio experience and working and doing a lot of commercial production and working with the sales people there, being in an ad agency gave me the other half of that sales training that I kind of needed, and that's where it started to click. It's like, okay, I understand how advertising works here. And in order to make a magazine work, obviously, as you know, you got to have somebody to pay the bills. So little by little, I just kind of pieced that together. And while I was working in the ad agency, I had a mentor of mine, a good friend, just kept saying, why don't you write a book about this DJ thing that you're doing?
Sure.
So oddly enough, even though I had been a commercial writer for several years and had written many other things, I hired a writer to do a book for me, which was a total waste of time and money. And, I ended up firing him right at the end when he came in. I thought, this guy has no concept of what I'm doing. I need to write this book. So I went to the library and figured out that most how-to books were about 12 chapters. Mm-hmm. So I started figuring out, well, I need 12 chapters, and I just kind of created an outline. And that's where the first spin-in book came from. And that was 1986 or 87 back then. And even then, in order to make that happen, I just started calling up the same people that you deal with today, as far as, and I just explained what I was doing little by little. I got some advertising to support it. And that's what got the first book going. And then a few years later, I met Dennis Hampson up in Canada. Mm-hmm. And got to know Dennis very well. And he knew a lot more about the administrative end of running a DJ service. So he collaborated with me on the second spin-in that we did. And it was the same thing. I just went out, started meeting advertisers, and that really helped when it came time for Mobile Beat, because now I'd already made contacts with a lot of these people through NAMM and through LDI, and by going to all these different trade shows that you're very familiar with. Mm-hmm. So what you have to do is just keep putting your face out there until they get tired of looking at you.
Oh, that's one way to do it, as far as to look at it.
Well, I do remember the one time I met with the owners of Newmark at the time was Harry Katofsky, and I can't remember his brother's name, but they were the two brothers that had started Newmark. And this is back in a time when Bernie Fryman was working there, and some of those, this is way back in the late 80s, I think. And I had met with them at NAMM, and I explained to them what I was doing and that we were going to be starting this magazine and what the target was going to be. And really at that time, Newmark was sort of the name in DJ gear. And I never forget them saying, we'll help you out. We'll send you a couple of our new CD players that you can give away in a contest. But our only advice is you don't quit your day job. Thanks for that encouragement. So there was a lot of that at first. Even when the first Mobile Beat came out, I remember going into music stores and saying, we've got a magazine here for DJs. You're selling a lot of gear for DJs. And I actually got thrown out of a couple of them because at that time, they said, no, we're a music store. We serve musicians. Yeah. Get out of here with your magazines. So, it was kind of fun at first.
So what took you from the book to the magazine? I mean, or was it kind of the thought being there all along, or was it after you had something down in print? It's like, the next logical step's this.
Yeah, it was a lot of it was that, John. And I was at, obviously the only way to promote the book back then was going around to some of these DJ shops that would have open houses on a Friday night or a Saturday night. I'd go in, set up a table, maybe do a short presentation, talk about something in the book, and then try to sell some copies. And little by little, they said, this is pretty good. Why don't you start a magazine? And that was kind of where that came from. And because of the ad work I was doing in the ad agency, I already had access to Macintosh computers and everything I needed as far as launching something like that. And had already done the book and already had contacts with a lot of the advertisers. That was sort of what opened the door for doing the first Mobile Beats.
And that would have been 1990. Then the first issue was published?
The first issue was published. It was supposed to have been, I think it was supposed to have been, I'm wrong. Bonacorsa would remember this. He remembers everything. It was supposed to have been March of 1990, I think, but it ended up being April because we got hit with the biggest ice storm this area has ever seen.
I remember Mike talking about that. Yeah. Yes, the first issue.
Yep. So the first issue was delayed because of the ice storm. And at that time, I was still working in radio as well. So, it was kind of, he was working on part of it. I was working on part of it. And, it was still kind of a part-time thing for us at that point.
Sure. How long did it take then, once you introduced something that was really the first publication that really focused on mobile DJs, how long did it go from being that kind of the part-time thing to the point where you guys are like, okay, we got to really dedicate full time to this because it's just taken off?
I think it was we kind of grew into it. It was demanding more and more time, between, just putting the content together. It was getting more pages as we got more advertisers, more pages. And we just kind of were so focused on getting it out and trying to improve it and keeping it going and finding ways to improve it. Because like the first year was just on like a newsprint, we had a penny saver guy that was printing it for us. And, I remember getting to a certain point where, because it was a bi-monthly every other month, or I guess that's called fortnightly or whatever it is. It's not bi-monthly, but it's something like that. Mm-hmm. It's every other month. You figure you put the first issue out. Well, we didn't see any revenue from that until about the time we had to send the second issue out. And then you didn't see any revenue from that until it was time to pay the first print bill. So I think it was after that cycle went through about 5 times, Mike finally come in one day and said, we have some money in the bank. Why don't we start paying ourselves?
Yep.
So it was a while that we did it. We just did it because we love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So those early days, I know exactly what you're talking about with the experience.
Yeah. You just, you get into it and you think, well, I can't give up now. I can't quit now. So you just keep going.
Yeah. So let's bridge now from you've got the publication, you're getting more readers and getting some. The next 2 areas I want to hit is I want to talk about the internet. When you guys started to say, oh, look at this thing, the website, and you guys started with chat rooms and different things there early on. And then which came first, the internet side of it or the Mobile Beat Las Vegas side of it?
I believe Mobile Beat Las Vegas would have been first. That was, I think the first show was right about the time of the 5th anniversary of the magazine. So that would have been about 1995, but the internet would have started coming along not too far after that, by 2000 or, probably well before that.
Yeah, a little bit before that, because I think I remember in the running, it was 97, 98, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
When I first ran into the Mobile Beat magazine myself, and specifically the chat room that was available at that time, that was the Mobile Beat chat room.
Yeah, and I know Mike was doing a lot of work with that and working with, we had found a local web guy that was helping us with stuff. And I know the Rochester newspaper at one point did a article about websites and what they were. And at that time, there were 12 companies in the area that had a website, and we were one of them. So that was it. That was pretty early on.
It was, that would have been a big thing at that time. Yeah. So the show started. What was the evolution from the publication, and what made you guys say, hey, let's do a show in Las Vegas?
Well, the first show that we did, and a lot of people there'd be a few people that might remember this, but we actually did the very first one with Nightclub and Bar magazine. It used to be, you remember that.
I've heard this story a few times, but please.
And that was, and that was, again, a big learning experience where we had gotten to know the owner at the time of Nightclub and Bar, and we explained what we were doing, and obviously DJs fit well with nightclubs and bars. So he said, well, why don't we do something cooperative, and you guys can have a little part of my show here to do part of your thing. And we went in and put on a whole bunch of DJ content, and then when it came time to get paid anything, didn't, and thought, well, what was that all about? So at that point, it's like, well, we just did all that work, didn't make anything on it, so why don't we just try it ourselves? So Mike started making fairly regular trips to Las Vegas and looking for venues that would be the very first show. The one with Nightclub and Bar was actually at Bally's.
There, I can't remember the hotel.
Yeah.
I was, Bally's. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's where it was, Bally's. And then after that, we had found a place just off the Strip. And again, just because we're testing the waters, we didn't want to take a big jump right into, something big right on the Strip. We figured, well, take a safe route here, and had a lot of people come out for it. One of the biggest comments that people made was, why can't you have this on the Strip? Yeah. So the year later, we were able to take it over to the Tropicana, and then it was at the Tropicana, then went to the Stardust, and then to the then after we had sold, then it went to
South,
one across the street from the Stardust. It's gone
Riviera
too.
The Riviera was there, and then it's South.
Then back to the Tropicana.
And then back, yeah.
Oh, South Point one year.
Point, there we go. I can remember that for sure.
Yeah, that was 2006, I think.
Yeah.
So that just kind of, it just kind of kept, the nice thing about the show was it we had the magazine to promote the show, and we had the show to promote the magazine. So the two of them worked real nice together. And then, of course, the internet sort of started downplaying the print end of things. And now it's, under the current ownership, it's all focused on the show.
Yeah, that's changed a lot over the years, of course, as people are consuming their information differently. Some of the early on, some of the stories and such of that were kind of, you think back, and again, the warms your heart type stories. Can you share a couple of those early stories with us tonight of things that just were moments that kind of stick with you?
Well, one that I've always, and I think I actually wrote this up in the, when we had the magazine, we used to have on the back page, it was nightmares and historic affairs. And I always saved this one because we always tried to take things from readers that would send in different ideas. And sometimes we would embellish them. I mean, and sometimes people knew that. A lot of them were very true. I mean, we had a couple there. We had one from a DJ somewhere in the Midwest who had gotten shot one night. And he talked about, how he had to make it through the gig with his shoulder bleeding, and how he managed to do it, got out, went to the doctor, but he was afraid to leave the job because he thought all of his gear would be stolen. So I think it was on the 10th anniversary, I finally told my favorite one was the night I broke my nose at a DJ job at a wedding. And it wasn't just breaking my nose, it was the fact that it just bled profusely, and I couldn't get it to stop. Oh, no. And it was fortunately, the group was doctors and nurses. So all of a sudden they're like totally, and the way I did it was totally stupid. I had parked my car. I had a station wagon, a Volvo station wagon at the time, and I parked it too close to the curb. And when I put the tailgate up, I reached in for a road case, and my head hit the tailgate, and the road case hit my face. So so this one guy standing next to me goes, just lean forward. And it just was like Niagara Falls.
Oh.
I could not get my nose to stop bleeding. And then these doctors and nurses were helping me, and they said, come on in and we'll help you get set up. So I went in and I go in and I get all set up, and I've got everything set up on the table for me. Nothing hooked up, of course, but everything on the table. And this was one of those tables where instead of it being just one piece, it was actually split down the center, but it had a tablecloth over it. So as soon as I pull the first table, all my gear falls through onto the floor. And this is in the days of records, so I've got records rolling across across the dance floor, and people are starting to look at me like, "Where'd you find this guy?" So then I put that back together, and then I thought, I need to just relax for a second, and I stepped back, and it was just to lean against the wall, but it was a fake wall, and that goes falling over. So it was just like one thing after another. Finally got it together and did a fairly good job. And at the end of the evening, they asked me if I would stay another hour. And it's the only time I ever declined. And I just said, I think I need to go home. It was just a horrendous evening. It was just one thing after another. But it happens,
Yeah, but
no. But I can't think of any. Personally, I think that's probably the worst I ever had.
Oh. We can laugh about him today, but boy, you've had nights, not quite that extreme, but yeah, we've had those nights.
But I definitely, when I went to the doctor on the following Monday, he goes, "Yeah, you broke your nose." And I said, "Well, what can I do about it?" He goes, "Nothing."
Yeah, just don't hit it for a few days because it's going to be sore.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it.
But it was just a matter of, because I was running late and I started doing things too fast, wasn't thinking, and was just trying to get everything set up. And I remember the other thing that was really the impetus to it was a hotel ballroom that was right across from the Rochester airport, and it was extremely windy. And every time I opened the door, the jet fumes would blow into the ballroom. So that was the whole thing, was trying to get everything in as quick as I could. And that's what led me to do all this crazy stuff. So.
And then you paid for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's kind of look at, so in 2006, you guys sold Mobile Beat to Ryan and the crew there who have been running it since. Where did the road take you after that?
I got to do a few things that I'd always wanted to do. I wanted to get a little bit more involved in the internet. I wanted to get involved. I've always enjoyed automobiles, so I wanted to kind of get involved in doing some internet car sales and things like that. And I did that for maybe a couple, 3 years, as well as doing some blogging and some other things, and just trying to get a feel for where the internet was going. But as you know, a lot of this information. I mean, originally the car sales thing was nice. It was a franchise I'd actually purchased, and that was nice. Except little by little, all the information that was proprietary to those of us who had the franchise became available through CarMax and all of these other things. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall of that one. It was very typical of that time period where you could get involved in an online business and have it just eaten up by whatever's coming next within the next 6 months. So I did that. And then, I was doing some blogging and started to get involved a little bit into some website design and started to do some things like that. And then I was talking with my wife one day and I said, I got all this gear here. How about we go back out and do some jobs? And she's like, you want to go back out and DJ? And I said, yeah, why not? Because I had probably one of the best systems in town. So she had never worked with me before, but she was a special ed teacher. Barb was a special ed teacher at that time. So for her, it was something really different outside of her career.
Yeah. So
she goes, well, where are you going to get the work? And I said, I got some friends. So I called up a couple friends, and a real good friend that used to DJ with me by the name of Tom Noonan had hooked me up with Jeff Corella at a local company called Whirl and Disc DJs of Rochester. I got to know Jeff, and he said, yeah, he'd love to have an old guy come back on board because he knows us old guys always show up on time and always, we're always there. We're reliable, if nothing else. And unfortunately, what ended up happening is I started going back out with Tom, and about 4 months after this happened, he had a massive heart attack and passed away. So I just kind of ended up taking his jobs and moved into that spot. So that was just one of those things, it just worked that way. And we worked with Jeff for 8 years up until this last fall. And I finally told him, I said, I think I'm done. 51 years of this is 51 years of playing records for people. I think that's enough. So, I'll still, if he needs somebody to do sound work or training or anything, I'll help him with that because he was always real good to us. But he sent us out on 25 jobs a year, basically whenever we wanted to go out. Sure. And it was great. It was nice to not have to run the business. All I had to do was load the truck and go. So
and sometimes that's a really nice thing without the stress of the paperwork and all the different aspects of it. Yeah, for sure.
And it made the escape easy too, because all I had to do was say, Jeff, I think I'm done.
And that was my question: is how did you make that? Is it something? It was just like that, or did you have in that last event? You're kind of feeling that this is it, my last hurrah.
Well, because we had actually originally planned on getting out of it at the end of 2017. Then there was a couple from our church that had said, we really want you to DJ our wedding. And it was an older couple. We knew them real well. So we thought, and then Jeff said, I've still got 5 or 6 people here that have requested you and Barb, can you go another year? And I said, 20 jobs, make it 15 to 20 and we'll do it.
Sure. So
that's basically what we did was we just kind of went down. And I was really hoping that the last night would be just perfect, but we ran into some electrical. It was a horrendously rainy night in an open pavilion at a state park, and every time they turned on the coffee makers, the microphones would click, and it was just one of those things. It was just, but we got through the night, and it was fine. So it could have been a better night, but I was happy with that. And no, at the end of it, I thought, that was fun. I don't think I'm going to do this anymore, but it was fun.
Didn't have that feeling as you wrapped up that, maybe I'm going to miss this an awful lot type of thing.
I do, yeah, because I kind of knew that I wasn't, because in previous years, usually, we'd finish up in October because, this up here in the north, there's nothing going on much after that. And we were only doing weddings. So, we'd finish up after the last wedding. And then usually by January or February, I was looking forward to going back out. And I noticed that didn't happen this year. It's like I started to think, I'm not really. I think I'm done. Yeah. It just got to that point where I thought, I think I've done this enough. I have no idea how many I've done, but I'm sure it's a couple thousand probably over time. I have no idea how many jobs I've done.
Sure.
But I can't complain. It was a good career.
Yeah, and that's one of the things as we're getting older, you hear a lot of DJs that we've grown up with, and they're talking about their exit strategies and how they're going to wrap things up. So it's always kind of interesting to hear those stories and such.
Oh yeah, and I've had people ask that question. So, well, how do you know it's time to wrap it up? And I say, you'll know.
Hmm.
You'll know. It's just you get to a point, and it's like, it's just you start to kind of feel like you're just not in sync anymore, and I'll be 68 this year. So, and I know a lot of guys that are older than I am that are doing this. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to be one of the DJ till you drop club members or not.
Hmm.
So I just kind of figured it was a good time to get out. And the other thing that we've noticed is the change in attitudes toward bride and grooms. Now, most of the jobs that Jeff would send us out on were either older or more mature couples in most cases,
Sure.
but not always. And a lot of times the younger kids really appreciated having a couple of older people there, doing the DJ MC work for them because we knew what we were doing.
Hmm.
But then some of them are just, no respect, no appreciation for what you do. And I really noticed how that changed because in the 80s and 90s, you're like a king sometimes when you go out to DJ. It's like, wow, the DJ's here.
Yes.
And it was a whole different sort of thing.
Yeah, I remember those days, and yeah, there was that aura that followed a person, and they were like, oh, and it's like, gosh,
The DJ's here, yeah.
but I just have music and gear. I mean, it's really nothing special, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have to know that. You bring in the music, you bring in the tunes.
Yeah,
So.
but
Yeah,
that was back.
but I
when-
remember, we had some great times these last 8 years that Barb and I have been doing this together. And I remember going to a little place over outside of Auburn, New York, which is a small town. This is an even smaller town next to an even smaller town. And I remember walking in, and the father of the bride came over to me and he goes, "Now, what do I owe you?" And I told him, and he takes out a stack of $20 bills this big. So I know he probably just went to an ATM machine
Yeah.
to get that many 20s. And he just starts peeling them off and says, "Thanks for being here." And he walks away. And I told Barb, I said, "We just got paid for showing up." That was it. We can leave now,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things like that. And a lot of nice people we've met over the years and had a great time. We've done couples and done their kids. I mean, it's been that long. So
Yeah, that it does if a person's been there for a while.
Yeah.
So what today? What kind of things are on the Robert Lindquist activities that you're working on these days?
Well, I still do some website design work, but primarily I've become more and more involved with Rob Savickas and the Photo Booth Expo.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, of course, was always one of our regular exhibitors at the Mobile Beat Show, and he got he was one of the first DJs I know in this area. Excuse me. And he's over in Niagara Falls, not too far from here. And he had gotten into the photo booth thing fairly early on.
Mm-hmm.
And some of his suppliers started saying, there needs to be a trade show for photo boothers.
Sure.
So he, 2015, I believe it was, he started the first one, had it at South Point because he always liked that when we had the Mobile Beat Show there. And he had contacted me for some marketing things, and we got reacquainted. I hadn't had a chance to stay in touch with him really after we sold Mobile Beat. And over the last few years, I've kind of worked more and more in helping him with his marketing and website stuff, email blasts, just kind of trying, as his show has grown relatively quickly. The Photo Booth Expo has grown, it's growing by leaps and bounds. So, at first it was kind of like, I sort of convinced him, look, you can't do all of this. Why don't you shoot some of it over my way? So little by little, I've been helping him with that. And I think it's good for him because it gives him somebody that's been there that he can bounce ideas off of. So, and Rob's a great guy. I mean, I've never met anybody that's so much integrity, and he's honest and goes so much out of his way for his exhibitors and everything. Does just a great show, and he puts on a great show.
So for someone who hasn't been to the Photo Booth Expo, because that's going to be coming up in February this year?
February 24th through 27th. Yep.
If people are interested in that and they're like, I'm just not sure what I'm going to get out of it, what will an attendee who wants to come and participate, what kind of things will they experience at Photo Booth Expo?
Well, being that we're primarily, chatting with DJs here, the one big thing that I've seen from that, and it's really opened my eyes for the future of the whole DJ industry, is just how do you scale that business? What can you add to it? And so a lot of DJs have added photo booths, but now I'm seeing when you go to the Photo Booth Expo, you see the next level and the next level after that. It's like, well, now that we have a photo booth, what can we do with that? And now you're seeing these guys showing up with these smaller, like iPad-based photo booths,
Right.
and they're renting them. They're renting them to Macy's and some of these other stores. They go in, set it up on the weekend. It runs itself. They come back and pick it up and pick up a check. So the photo booth thing really sort of opens the doors for anybody that really wants to build a DJ business beyond just being a DJ and make it an entertainment services company. Going to the Photo Booth Expo, they're going to get their eyes opened on a lot of new ways to do that, because you've got all this photography involved. You've got a lot of technology there that goes beyond the DJ technology. So I think that's it. And I think I can't remember exactly what our numbers are for this year. I know Rob sent them over to me earlier, but we've got, he's got a full exhibit floor. I think 144 exhibitors. We've had people there from 55 countries last year, and probably the attendance this year should top 4,000, I think. So that's our goal. We hit over 3,500 last year, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, Rob creates a carnival atmosphere that's very much like the very early Mobile Beat shows. Mm-hmm. And that makes it a lot of fun, because a lot of these photo booth companies, even though they come from all over the world, they're relatively small businesses, and a lot of them are there to try out new things and introduce new technology. We've seen robotic photo booths there. Yes. That was a big hit. You saw Oko, and just all kinds of things like that. So when I got involved with it, I knew nothing about photo booths, and I didn't have a slightest idea, but I educated myself fairly quickly on it after going to the first show. I was totally blown away. I thought, what is this? What is this? This makes no sense to me at all. But then by the second show, I started to think, hey, this is newsworthy. So the first show that I really helped Rob with the marketing was the third show a year ago, and I got the Las Vegas Morning Press to show up there, and they did a live spot, and that was big. That was really a real lucky find to get them over, and I'm hoping they'll be back again this year, because this will be the 5th anniversary of the show already. So any DJ that is looking for some new ideas, it's a good time to go. And I know a lot of Mobile Beat people came over last year, with the two shows just happened to coincide.
Yeah, there was a lot of traffic through the doors. It's very impressive to see that amount of exhibit hall that size. And then those halls were just full of people most of the day. It was really impressive. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to be at South Point.
He's going back to South Point this year for the 5th anniversary show. And I believe it'll be there the following year too, but I'm not too sure. I'm supposed to make that public. So
you guys didn't hear that. We'll be in South Point in 2019. We're in South Point.
Something like that. So South Point, Rob always liked South Point, and I like South Point. It's, you're off the strip, but the interesting thing about the Photo Booth Expo as opposed to Mobile Beat is because it's a global show. We're bringing in people from all these different countries. Mobile Beat people will say, well, if it's not on the strip, that's not convenient. But these people, it's like, it's in Las Vegas. What matters? To them, it's Las Vegas. So it doesn't matter. So, and it's easy to get from South Point up to the strip and get around. And that's one of the reasons a lot of these people come from so far away, is it's a good excuse to come to Vegas and do it as a business expense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure. And Vegas is such a fun place to go and experience, whether it's just going down to the Fremont there, walking the main part of the strip. Yeah, there's just so much.
And South Point has, for people that haven't been to South Point, they've got some wonderful restaurants. They got like 12 really nice world-class restaurants in there, and bowling alleys and theaters and all kinds of things. So you can bring the whole family. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's definitely. We stayed there the one particular year with the show, and yeah, it was a really nice facility. Nice. I've been just kind of watching the chat room here.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it looks like okay. Neat. Well, Robert, I think we're going to wrap things up here tonight. We've got our next show that'll be coming up in here in a little bit. Thank you for your time, and thanks for kind of going through and reminiscing a little bit for us tonight.
It's been a lot of fun, John. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm sure we'll probably see you out at the expo this year.
We'll see you at we have a few of the different events as we get into that 2019 calendar and things going on all over. So thank you guys for being with us tonight, and we'll be back in about 20 minutes with our next show tonight. Brian and Casey are going to be talking a little bit about some of these different meetups and what you can learn from going to these different educational meetups around the country. Thanks for watching.
you.